This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to Disabled Persons Assembly's Notable Radio Show. DPA is a systemic advocacy organisation run by and for disabled people. DPA is a pan-impaired organisation with members across the country. Over the next half hour, we'll discover how we can work collaboratively to achieve inclusion for all New Zealanders. DPA's Notable Radio Show, a whole new attitude.
Kia ora, this is Amy Taylor for DPA Notable Radio. Our guest who was meant to be on today, Josh, has come down with a tummy bug. So really, really sorry, Josh. This is horrible. I hope you feel better, and we will find another time where you can come and talk to us about advocacy for sensory spaces, and we look forward to that. So instead of talking about sensory spaces today, we're going to talk about what's going on for the disabled community at the moment in Otipoti, Dunedin, because it's actually a pretty busy time for us. A big project that you will have seen in the news, which is quite controversial, is the Changing Places toilet. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Changing Places, because I think people might be a bit confused. Changing Places is a charity. I think it was started in the UK, and they advocate for fully accessible bathrooms for severely disabled people. These generally include a hoist system on the roof, and a changing table, adult-sized changing table, which doubles as a shower table, and a fully accessible toilet with grab bars and an adjustable height sink. The controversy in Dunedin comes in with the massive price tag. So this has just been installed at the railway station and coming in at $750,000, the price of a house. People are not particularly impressed by that cost. The other controversy here is the Changing Places system. So Changing Places actually charges users an admin fee to be able to get a key to come in. And this admin fee is $150. Now, $150 is a lot of money to be able to access a toilet. So while we're really excited to have this facility, there is certainly questions about whether this was actually the best way of building a fully accessible toilet in Dunedin. We absolutely support the work of Changing Places and getting fully accessible toilets. But I personally, and this is my opinion, not DPA's, is that I wonder whether our council could have done this more economically if we had not used the Changing Places scheme for this. The other question that I have is around the location of the Changing Places bathroom. Changing Places bathroom has been placed at Dunedin railway station. There was some consultation with the local disabled community and advocates, but I wonder whether it wouldn't have been better located on the main street, in George Street, where people can access it, those that don't have a vehicle, because the railway station is largely a tourist area. So lots of questions. On the whole, very happy that our council is invested in a fully accessible bathroom, the first one on the South Island. So it's generally a positive thing, but some questions there. The next thing I would like to talk about is our absolutely amazing day that we had the previous weekend, the George Street Market on the Long Waitangi Day weekend. Absolutely fabulous. So many people attending, so many people. Like, it was incredibly crowded. But it was a fantastic event and really showcased what the new George Street setup and can actually facilitate for our community. Having said that, I went along and there were certainly some accessibility concerns. So I'm going to talk a bit about the accessibility concerns and what I think that our council can do better with the George Street Market to actually make sure that everybody in our community can really enjoy such a fabulous, fabulous event. Because it really was fabulous. We saw so many people, also cruise ship passengers. So, really exciting to see George Street come alive as a pedestrian area. So, I don't want to be negative. We're going to come up with some helpful suggestions that our council can potentially use to overcome some of these accessibility issues. So, one of the issues that we have is that due to the location of the stores, many of the pathways for the pedestrians were over the curbs. And there aren't very many curbs on George Street, but they managed to direct the pathways for pedestrians over them, which was pretty unfortunate. So we know that pedestrian walkways should always be on flat areas, and we should always leave enough room between the end of a stall so that the pedestrians can access a flat area to get back onto the sidewalk. So for future reference, it would be wonderful to see the DCC rearrange things. It's a simple rearrangement to make sure that there is access without curbs. We also had some barriers, I believe, although I'm guessing that they might actually be for sound projection, these big screens that they had up. But unfortunately, the big screens were over the normal crossing areas where people cross the road. Again, not ideal. I wonder whether they could be placed elsewhere so that people could actually use the designated flat areas. Now, remember, I'm not blind, but for the blind community, these are the areas where the little raised dots are to show people where it is safe to cross the road. And the blind community, even if the road is blocked off, the blind community still need these dots because they orientate them, they show them where they are. So when you block them off, then that's going to be very confusing. Also, for wheelchair users, when you block off the flat area, going back to our previous point, we have to use a curb area to get from what is a street, although the street has actually not been used by cars, but to the sidewalk where we can access the shops. And remember, this is not just physical barriers on the ground that are a problem. There are people everywhere. It's super crowded. So when you have huge crowds, it is really difficult as a wheelchair user to navigate. So then it's especially important that there are no barriers to navigation at ground level or, getting in the way of actually moving around. And we have only very small areas of flat left on the crossing, but these are not wide enough. And one of the issues that I experienced when I was at the George Street Market is my wheelchair would fall into the garden. And when you have a fall as a wheelchair user, it can be very dangerous. Also, I required some help to get out of the garden. Not ideal, slightly embarrassing, but never mind. If you leave enough room, this is not going to be a problem. They've also had areas where there were a lot of wires, and they covered these wires with these plastic covers, which is great. It's wonderful to see the DCC doing these safety things of covering the wires. But when you cover wires, it's best to try and bunch your wires all together so that you don't have 5 different covers or 5 different ramps that a wheelchair user has to go over. Running all the wires together would reduce the number of bumps that we had to navigate, because these were actually really difficult to navigate. I had to go at a 90-degree angle to get over them. I couldn't come at a smaller angle to go over the bumps created by the wire covers, because else I got stuck. So I was constantly getting stuck this day, and it got in the way of me enjoying myself, I must say. Like, I was actually really happy to be out and about, happy to be out in the community, enjoying this fabulous event. But when there are barriers, it does actually put you off a bit, and you feel in the way, you feel like you're not being taken into consideration as a valid user of the space. And so also the other thing that was happening on this day was a huge amount of entertainment. We love entertainment. Fabulous, fabulous. And so many young entertainers. It was really, really great. And they were funny and really, really talented people. Fabulous to see so many young entertainers. But the entertainment took place at the junction, so where four cars would meet typically. And this was really, really problematic because there were so many people crowded around these entertainments. There was no place for pedestrians to pass by. And this created a significant problem for wheelchair users. Pushing through crowds as a wheelchair user is nigh on impossible. It's actually really, really difficult. Nobody's expecting somebody to be at waist height. They're looking completely over your head. And the specific problem for me in that was that my little Bubs, who's 8, she's not a baby anymore, decided she was going to make off in these huge crowds. And I couldn't get to her because I kept getting stuck. So I think that what the council should consider doing is coning off a pedestrian walkway and labelling it really clearly, so that when our pedestrians come along, they actually can move quickly through that crowded area rather than actually getting stuck in the crowds. And this will be great for everybody. It's not just for wheelchair users, it's not just for the blind community, for everybody. If you can actually have a clear walkway through past the entertainment, then you can go off to do your shopping and the rest of the stores benefit. Parking was an issue on this day, especially for mobility card holders. When you block off the entire of George Street, you're blocking off the majority of the mobility parking access that is available in the centre of our city. So the thing the council should consider doing is replacing some of that mobility parking with parking on the surrounding streets on a temporary basis. So put out some signs to say that these parking spots are now mobility parking spots and you're going to be fined your $750 if you park here. So that the people that need to be able to park close to the event and close to the centre of town are catered for. So the last thing that was an issue was that whilst the council supplied a couple of portaloos, because this is actually a toilet, it's a bit of a toilet desert in our centre of our town. There are toilets in the malls, but if you can't actually access the malls, then toilets are incredibly limited. So the council had put up a couple of portaloos, but none of these portaloos were accessible. So it's really important that the council should consider having at least one accessible portaloo at events, especially if those events, I don't know whether this event did, but especially if those events go over the time where the mall is actually accessible to people. So if when the mall is closed, definitely add accessible portaloos. So that was the George Street Market. I loved it. I really, really did enjoy myself. It was fun. It was vibrant, but there were some accessibility issues. So the other thing that's going on in Dunedin at the moment is you will have heard that they've blocked off a section of Queen's Drive for an active trail. So this active trail trial that's a bit of a tongue twister, an active trail trial, is going on until April. And what they've done is from Braid Road to Preston Street, they've blocked off this section. And the idea is that pedestrians and cyclists will use this route through our beautiful Victorian town belt. And actually, that will promote active travel for people. So, again, like the changing places, a toilet, this has been very, very controversial. So people are really, although the spend on this was quite small, it was only $15,000. But remember, it's only a trial. People are questioning the use of public funds in blocking off this area for cyclist and pedestrian-only use. And the argument goes that cars have always been able to travel along the street, which I don't know whether that's a particularly good argument. But I do have some accessibility concerns. So first of all, whilst I don't really buy into the argument that cars have always been able to use this route, so cars should continue to be able to use this route if there are alternate routes that cars can use. But one of the things that we do know about this route is that it's very scenic. And there are members of our disabled community that are not physically able to get out into the community, into our green spaces, because of their disability limits them in actually being able to get physically out and about. And one of the things that people who are severely disabled or elderly can really enjoy is a scenic drive. And many of our scenic drives in Dunedin require going a little bit out of the city. This scenic drive is slap bang in the middle of the city, and it's a lovely drive. It's beautiful. It's very green. It's very sheltered. And it's also very historic. It's a scenic driving route that's been available to our community since the 1800s. I think it's one of the only Victorian town-built access areas in the entire world. So it's really precious and very enjoyable for those that are not actually able to get out in the community into our green spaces. It's a beautiful historic green space. So by blocking this off and only including cyclists and pedestrians in this space, you're stopping those that actually cannot be cyclists or pedestrians from enjoying this space. The intention of supporting active travel is really important. However, there are several elements of this current design that present real accessibility barriers for people. On the Preston Road side, one of the concerns is the barriers that are stopping the cyclists, the cars, not the cyclists, the cars. The barriers that are stopping the cars are actually present a barrier for those using mobility equipment. So I went along yesterday with my two little kids, and I could fit my wheelchair through the barriers, but it was a tight fit, and my wheelchair is teeny. It's one of the smallest portable power chairs on the market. So anybody with a bigger power chair or a scooter would really potentially have huge problems getting through these barriers. And if you can't even get through the barrier to enjoy the active travel space, then you're not going to be able to enjoy it. The seating that's provided consists of bar stools. Bar stools are not an accessible design. They're on a platform, which means that wheelchair users can't even get onto the platform to sit alongside their friends that might be at the bar stools. And the reason they put in this seating is because they want to have events with food trucks there. And I can completely understand that of course, seating is really important if you have food trucks. People like to sit and eat their food. But this is a really poor choice of seating because it is completely inaccessible. And this is not my argument, but I have also heard other people arguing that bar stools actually are in some ways an invitation for people to come along with their friends and consume a lot of alcohol. I don't know whether that's actually going to occur, but I can hear their concerns. There are planters placed throughout the area, which also create obstacles for the blind and low vision pedestrians. On the other side, on the Broad Road side, there's a tennis table. Table tennis table. I'm great with all the tongue twisters today. There's a table tennis table, and they've supplied rackets and balls, and it's really actually quite fun. But my kids enjoyed it, but it's on grass, which means that there is a potential problem for wheelchair users being able to actually access the space. Also, the grass is really overgrown. It's not been cut recently, which also presents a bit of an issue. There are no toilets in this area, not even not accessible toilets. There are no toilets at all. This poses a potential issue for people with continence and urgency issues. The council has put in some parking, but there is not a single mobility parking spot allocated. And on the Braid Road side, there is no parking at all. It's street parking only, which, again, no mobility parking allocated. So, yeah, it's such a lovely idea, but from a disabled community perspective, it has not necessarily been presented in a great way. So that's a little bit concerning for our community. So we just want to feed back to the council to say, we see what you're trying to do, and we love the idea of people getting more active, getting out and about, but we really want to be included in that. We don't want to actually find that you've put in an active travel space that is not accessible to the disabled community. Other concern that I feel like the council needs to address, and it's really relevant for the disabled community, although not exclusive to them, is that this is an incredibly sheltered and isolated area. I saw so many young teenage girls walking in this space. Well, not so many, a handful, and they were alone or in pairs. And it just made me wonder whether they were actually particularly safe, because this is a stretch of 1.8 kilometres of very, very sheltered space. And yeah, of course, members of the disabled community are also very, very vulnerable to violence. So it's something to consider. So that's the Queen's Drive Active Space. So we've talked about the accessibility of the George Street Market, which was held on the 9th of February. And we've talked about the Queen's Drive Active Space, and we've talked about the Changing Places bathrooms. These are the things that are really going on for our disabled community currently. The last thing that I quickly want to mention is the new electric buses. So the council the ORC has put in place a number of new electric buses to cover routes. We're lucky that actually, because of how the scheduling works, there's more EV coverage than they were expected. So the diesel buses are on the road less than was expected, and this is great for the environment. The electric buses, I've been on them, and I can tell you from an accessibility point of view, they're very, very well done. The big electric buses even allow for as many as 4 wheelchair users to get on. So that's absolutely fabulous, and we're really, really happy to see this. They're going to put even bigger electric buses on the Palmerston route, and these are going to have seatbelts, so that's exciting too. So we've got lots of things happening for our disabled community locally at the moment, which is fabulous and exciting. And we are really, really happy that our council is actually getting engaged with some consultation and some real activities and things that are needed for the disabled community. So that's fabulous. Thank you very much for listening. This is Amy Taylor for DPA Notable Radio.
Disabled Persons Assembly is Aotearoa, New Zealand's first pan-disability national organisation, providing system-level advocacy for all disabled people. Membership is free for individuals. If you'd like to know more, visit our national website at www.dpa.org.nz or contact your local kaituitui or community connector, Amy Taylor, at kaituitui.otipoti@dpa.org.nz. Disabled Persons Assembly, a whole new attitude.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.